Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for our expert talk on freelance industry trends and in-demand skills. Please note that this event is being recorded and will be available for reviewing at any time on our community events page. I'm going to go ahead and drop that link in the chat right now. And please note that in this interaction here, there is a general chat section and then there's a Q&A section. If you have any specific questions, a little bit easier for me to track if it's in the Q&A section. We will have a little bit of time for that at the end of the presentation here, but feel free to participate in the general chat. We like these to be interactive. For those that don't know, my name is Will Simpson, and I'm an Upwork event manager, and we are joined today by Upwork VP of Talent Solutions, Margaret Lilani. Thank you so much for joining us today, Margaret.
Thanks for having me, Will. I'm happy to be here.
We're doing for round two. Last year was a smashing success, and I'm looking forward to the regular update cadence. Today, we're going to be covering a few topics. We're going to be looking at the first half of the presentation is going to be looking at freelance industry trends and insights. And then the second half is going to be the top 10 in-demand skills in a variety of different work verticals. Now, for those of you that joined us last year for this version of the event, I believe we had 3 different work areas where we were highlighting the top 10 in-demand skills. This year, we have 5 work verticals. So getting better at what we're doing, expanding the information. Let's go ahead and dig in here. Now, the data we're going to be covering today comes from a variety of places. One of the primary locations is from a recently published report, which is a Freelance Forward 2022 report. And the second half of it, which is about the top 10 in-demand skills, that's coming from the Upwork database and what we're seeing on the back end there. So this is all current, relevant information, and let's take a look. So as I mentioned last year, we looked at some specific work verticals and some stats associated to those. This year, we're actually going to zoom out a little bit, and we're going to look at the freelance industry as a whole. So Margaret, from the amazing and uplifting stories that we've heard from many independent professionals I've interviewed just this last year alone, I feel like we're continuing to see a very real and much needed evolution on how we all work now. But better than a feeling is knowing. Can you please talk us through what you're seeing from the data side of things?
Yes, definitely. So freelancing was already a consistent and growing part of the US workforce before the pandemic, but COVID accelerated the widespread adoption of independent talent. We attribute this to a macro shift in the workforce where people are questioning the old ways of working for the first time. Instead of being willing to return to an office with 9 to 5 hours and minimal flexibility, professionals seek an alternative, which is freelancing. The pandemic enabled this realization en masse and helped to accelerate what would likely have been a more gradual adoption. One of the benefits of the pandemic was that it helped normalize working remotely. Suddenly, people and businesses had to be comfortable meeting and hiring people they had never met in person, which is how many freelancers have operated for decades. This is likely one of the reasons why, when asked about freelancing opportunities, 76% say that there are more available today that were not available before the pandemic. Similarly, this normalization of remote work and hiring freelancers had led to a positive shift in the perception around freelancing as a career.
Definitely. Now, I originally made the transition from a standard employment situation at a tech company to freelancing back in 2018, I believe. However, I definitely tested the waters for about 6 months before really making that commitment and jumping fully into being an independent professional. Now, it looks like there are a variety of ways others have engaged in a similar type of approach.
Yeah, definitely. It can be an opportunity for professionals to look at alternative ways of leveraging their skills, explore building or trying new ones, or trying a new career. Because of the flexibility and control that freelancing provides, it's a way for many professionals to diversify and protect their income, which is really important during economic uncertainty. This optimism may also be due to the fact that 68% of freelancers have more than one employer or job or contract project. And so, when asked about an economic downturn in the next few years, 3/4 of all professionals said they were concerned. Freelancers were not immune to this, but they may feel optimistic about the future despite the concern. Overall, 69% of freelancers expect their income to actually increase in the incoming year. This optimism may be due to the fact that 68% of freelancers have had more than one employer, job, or contract project, With this diversity of income, there is less reliance on one single employer than those with a full-time job might feel. Similarly, freelancers see more opportunities available. When asked about freelancing opportunities available today that were not available before the pandemic, 76% of people said that there are more. This is compared to just 57% last year.
That's fantastic. That was a good comment too from Elizabeth in the chat. She's been freelancing since 1994. Wow, trendsetter for sure. That's fantastic. Really ahead of the curve. And I feel like from a lot of the conversations I've had, it's a way for people to test out different passions as a viable workflow opportunity, as opposed to just what they happen to be doing for their 9 to 5. So it's great to see that people have that opportunity and that flexibility. Now, I know one of the concerns commonly voiced over the past year or so was whether we would culturally end up falling back into a traditional work style arrangement after the worst sort of effects of the pandemics had subsided. However, it sounds as though independent professional model is still gaining momentum and preference. Is this true?
Yeah, so as we've said, opportunities for freelancers are at an all-time high, and I don't anticipate this dropping in the future. One of the benefits of the pandemic was that it helped normalize working remotely. Suddenly, people and businesses had to be comfortable meeting and hiring people that they had never met in person. And so professionals recognize the benefits that freelancing offers them from a work and life standpoint. They are a part of this massive aha moment, causing people to scrutinize the confines of a traditional 9 to 5. And for those seeking something outside of that, freelancing offers flexibility and control that a traditional job simply cannot provide. For some skilled professionals, that can mean that freelancing allows them the control to take only the projects that best align with their area of interest or expertise. For others, freelancing could enable them to continue work and pursue what they're passionate about, also while being a parent or a caregiver. Freelancers are also able to work with a diverse set of clients and projects, which helps them to further develop their own skills and expertise and continue to gain experience.
It's so true. I can't help but feel that after years of freelancing and having many different sort of temporary bosses, if you will, and exploring different work models and workflows, it's really created a very well-rounded, capable sort of skill set where I'm very adaptable. Whereas before, you work in a 9 to 5 for how many years, you're only used to the sort of workflow you're used to. So I feel like it's definitely a good way to sharpen our toolkit. Now, what trends are we seeing when it comes to the generational adoption of freelancing? Is there a higher rate of engagement with certain age groups?
Yeah, so I'm really, really excited about some of the data that we've seen across the generational slice of this. So, okay, overall, freelancing continues to be an appealing career choice for young professionals. In 2022, 43% of all Gen Z and 46% of millennial professionals freelance. That's like unprecedented. Our survey estimates that 23% of all freelancers say their work entails creating influencer style content, which rises to 27% and 29% of Gen Z and millennial freelancers, respectively. This growing field will likely attract younger professionals to freelance. Next, so if we think about reasons for freelancing by generation, Gen Z, for example, have grown up with the internet and social media. They have access to career paths and opportunities that exist outside of that traditional corporate world. We see young professionals jumping right into freelance careers and creating online and influencer types of content or design work and programming. They've had direct access to work on projects in the field that they're passionate about, and many are looking to take advantage of that. Meanwhile, millennials and Gen X seem to be freelancing for more autonomy and flexibility. Instead of being forced into offices and having that rigid 9 to 5, these groups value remote work and autonomy. Many in this age group are caregivers, and freelancing provides the better ability to balance work and life responsibilities. 71% of millennial freelancers cite balancing caregiving responsibilities as a reason for freelancers, which compares with 51%, 62%, and 53% from Gen Z, Gen X, and Boomers, respectively. So a lot more focus on that group there. So finally, many Boomers, they're either freelancing to ease into retirement or to gain a way to have more control over their careers. Some are freelancing in order to supplement their expenses until they reach 65 or even beyond. And others freelance in retirement because they want to continue to work, but would rather be able to dictate when and where and for whom they're working. Um, another couple of pieces of data around this, freelancing across generations. This year, 27% of all boomers in the workforce did some type of freelance work. That's up from 20% in 2021. Freelancing in retirement, overall, 60% of boomer freelancers report that they did not have another employer or job. So that means that's all they're doing. And then freelancing part-time, when we look at what best describes their freelancer roles, 64% of boomers report being part-time freelancers, 20% report freelancing full-time, and 9% report being a full-time employee who earns extra income from freelance work. And 7% classify their arrangement as other. Top reasons these boomers are freelancing, I know we already covered some of them, but when specifically asked about why they freelance, some have said, so that I can progress my career at my own pace. 42% of them said that. To be able to spend more time with my family, 31%, to better manage physical or mental health, 28%, and to take more control over my personal development and career path, 27%. So those are the top 4 reasons among boomers.
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of it, and it's funny you mentioned earlier on in the point, the Gen Z has grown up with the internet, and I was just musing on this morning. I remember when the internet arrived.
Oh
And that's one of,
man.
it's going to be, I know I'm aging myself on this one, but it's just one of those things that kids now, and I'm from now on will just expect that as part of it, and so growing up with the skill sets of working on Instagram and the different social medias and video editing and just bathing in that sort of online experience, I feel
Yeah.
really gives an edge.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and it's crazy if you think about it. Like the up and coming youngest generation, they are the first generation to have gone to school remotely as a normal thing during the pandemic. And so not only is remote work going to be a natural thing for them, but like remote everything is going to be natural for them. So this is a fundamental shift psychologically in how younger humans are going to perceive the world and what's ahead of them.
100%. I have an example from my personal experience as well. I have a nephew in Australia who's just a little tot. He's 4 now. And I grew up with relatives far away. And whenever I met the relatives, they were sort of a new time meeting them each time because I didn't have a relationship with them in between. But now kids that are meeting grandma and grandpa on Zoom or on a video call are able to create those relationships. And those relationships are valid when they meet in person. They're not an online relationship. Is just the same as a neighbor or an aunt that lives close. So it's definitely shifted the perception of relationship and connecting.
Exactly. I mean, I have an 8-year-old son, and his grandparents are currently traveling internationally, but we still talk to them every day. They live on the other side of the United States, but it is completely normal. Like Zoom and FaceTime and whatever other medium you're using, it's not just something that people use at work. Like generationally, this is embedded in our culture, and I mean, it's clearly not going away.
Yeah, I'm glad for it. I think it brings everyone closer, and I think makes people realize we all have more in common than we maybe thought about.
Love that.
So, the next segment here is something that's been a recurring theme in the origin story of most independent professionals that I've spoken with, increasing our quality of life through an appropriate work-life balance. I know for me personally, the catalyst for my leaving my traditional job to become an independent professional was primarily the feeling that I didn't own my time anymore, and it wore me down over the years. Now, discovering freelancing and taking the reins back in my own experience was a really huge turning point for me. From what I see here, it looks like many others have had a similar experience.
Yes, and we've talked about this a little bit already, but I can't say enough times. Control is a central theme behind people freelancing, and it is something that people want now more than ever. When we look at the top reasons for freelancing, people select options like to be able to pursue the work I am passionate about or find meaningful, to take more control over my personal development and career path, and to have flexibility in my schedule, i.e., what days or times I work. These professionals want to control the work they do, who they do it for, and when they do it. Many professionals who freelance are choosing to reprioritize aspects of their professional lives. They are not necessarily seeing the job title or the position that has the most cash or cachet in corporate America, but rather they are selecting a career path that best suits their lives.
Actually, sorry, just responding to the chat here. All right. Let's talk about rates and earnings next. So, as much as we may love the work we do, ultimately we have to keep the lights on, right? So, what are we seeing in this space?
Yes, yes, exactly. So independent professionals determine and set their own rates for projects. There is a very wide range, and the amount of money you can make per skill is dependent on what the particular skill is. For example, tech skills often have higher rates than other skills. And often, with more experience, more time on the platform, or higher qualifications, you are able to set a higher rate for your work. Many freelancers tell us that they have made just as much, if not more, than when they worked in a traditional job.
Yeah, that's it's impressive there, and especially people being satisfied with the amount of money that they're attaining. I found that when I shifted to freelancing initially, I took a significant hit on my pay rate, but I was spending less money as I called it retail therapy to deal with different stresses and anxiety. I'm like, yes, buy the new gadget that I don't really need, get that little hit of dopamine. And then I find that when I actually cultivated a life that was just more my speed, doing what I was passionate about, that I was spending a lot less money, and I ended up taking home about the same at the end of the day, which I thought was quite intriguing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've talked to freelancers all around who are making six, seven figures. It's achievable. I mean, you have to do the work, but it's certainly achievable.
Yeah, it's a definitely good call out. I mean, I've interviewed recently just Evan Fisher and Adam Palmer, two incredibly successful and very generous with their time independent professionals. And you really can make a monstrous business if you want, and if that's your passion. But it just takes a bit of effort and training. And attending events like this is a good starting point.
Valid.
So let's shift gears to the second half of our presentation here. This one's a little bit more just facts, hard hitting, and some context. So we're going to be looking at the most in-demand skills in 5 different sectors here. We have tech, marketing, customer service and admin support, accounting and consulting, and design and creative. So
Yes.
let's dive into that.
All right. So businesses that want to remain competitive with the best talent are starting to realize that they must expand their talent strategies to include independent professionals. Today, many companies continue to face a persistent talent shortage and are navigating economic uncertainty. Businesses are finding solutions by largely embracing remote work and experimenting with new work models and emerging talent sources. Businesses that don't adopt a talent solution are going to miss out on a large and expanding pool of professional talent. Upwork's latest in-demand skills reveal the essential roles, that highly skilled independent talent will play in filling talent gaps and solving businesses' most pressing needs in 2023. The current economy is uncertain and there is variability in the labor market. We're seeing many companies conduct layoffs. During tough times, it can be an opportunity for professionals to look to alternative ways to leverage their skills, explore building new ones, or try a new career. Because of the flexibility and control that freelancing provides, it's a way for many professionals to diversify and protect their income, which is so important during economic uncertainty.
Yeah, and just to qualify some confusion in the chat, this list here is we're going to be diving into the top 10 in-demand skills in each of these categories. It's not to say that tech is the most in demand and design and create is least in demand, just for clarification. So let's start off by looking at tech. Now, I know things often move quite quickly in the tech sector as new software and powerful tools are being created every day in this arena. So what are we seeing as the most in-demand skills for this sector on Upwork?
Yeah, so we use technology every day to work, to learn, to communicate, to transact. Almost every business out there uses some form of technology, and it's no surprise then that businesses are looking to freelance talent to help create their products and services. The number one overall in-demand skill was full stack development. Today, many companies continue to face a persistent talent shortage and are navigating economic uncertainty. Businesses that are finding these solutions by embracing remote work and experimenting with new work models and emerging talent sources. Businesses, again, I will say it again because it's so important. Businesses that don't adopt a talent solution are missing out on a large and expanding pool of professional talent.
Definitely. And I know that the tech sector on Upwork has been a vastly expanding and hugely in demand, from what I understand, especially when we take a look at some of the enterprise clients that are working on the Upwork space. I know that there's always an extreme demand for people working in the tech sector with these types of skills. So some good upskilling hints. Next up, let's take a look at marketing. What are we seeing here?
Okay, so as companies update their offerings and those strategically shift, so too does their marketing. Marketing skills, in particular digital marketing skills, are highly sought after as the world remains so digitally focused. Businesses want to meet customers where they are, and that is often online, which is why we see so many digital marketing skills on that list. Also, sales and business development saw 54% growth year over year.
That's impressive. If I'm remembering correctly, also from last year, I believe SEO and the digital marketing were a little bit lower on this list. So I'm not surprised now to see them ranking up at the top. And I know that SEO is a constantly evolving beast.
Yeah,
Very
you know,
complex.
like whether times are good or bad, companies need to increase their exposure. All companies still want to grow, and so it's going to make these skills all the more critical as they're facing economic headwinds.
Definitely. Next, we have customer service. Now, the customer service work vertical continues to see a considerable amount of evolution as the work models and consumer behaviors have shifted. So, what are people looking for here?
Yeah, with all of that growth, you need to make sure that your customer base is happy. And customer service and customer support come right in there. So customer service is incredibly important because it's direct connection to the customer. As businesses are growing, they often need more and more people to help support their customers. And as our world has gone digital, as we've said, and remote work has become normal, more businesses are looking to remote talent to help out with customer service. Data entry here on this list actually saw 47% growth year over year.
That's impressive. And data entry has been that was my sort of entry to the business world, was doing part-time sort of data entry jobs, and it's amazing in the how old am I now? Maybe 10 years it's been going on. It never goes away. It becomes more and more important. And I feel like it's a good sort of entry level thing too, but also for the professionals getting a bit more advanced in it. But
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we continue to see more and more automation, but that data has to get in there somehow. And so I think you make a really good point for those who are looking to dip their toe into independent work or freelancing, and may not necessarily have a specialization. Data entry is a really good way to try it because it can be trained. It requires that you be diligent and detail oriented, and have excellent service, but it's definitely something that can help launch your career.
I find it also touches a variety of other different sectors and can be a lead in to, ooh, do I find the marketing use of it interesting? Do I find the analytics side of it interesting? Or do I want to get into maybe using this data in software tools that I'm developing? So good little thread to pull on, I thought.
Yeah, definitely. And I will add there on customer service. Though if you have excellent customer service skills, and whether you're using them in a corporate scenario, if you're using them, in a school scenario, if you're using them in a project management scenario, like it really comes down to those interaction school skills. And to your point, those can be leveraged in so many different areas. And so just thinking about the paths that can be launched, not just by a ladder in customer service, but the other places it can go are pretty filled with potential.
Yeah, and Jennifer in the chat brought up a good point. Writing is also a great segue into other areas, just because it touches every area of a business. If you're on the copy team, you know what every sort of department is using it for. So great sort of insights and areas to explore maybe unknown passions and interests.
Absolutely. It's communication skills at its core.
Oh yeah. So next we have accounting and consulting. What skills are customers looking for in this space?
Yes. Understanding data, financials, and what all those numbers mean for the future of your business is not only vital, but necessary across industries. So while accountants and consultants have been around for a while, businesses are realizing that there is unlocked potential in looking to the growing base of remote and independent talent that supports these skills. Unsurprisingly, then, the top skill, accounting, saw 45% growth year over year.
That's a lot of growth. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't the consulting a relatively new category on Upwork? Or am I confusing that?
I mean, we can say relative, but it's been around for a while, but we're definitely seeing more rapid growth in that skill.
Nice. Good to know. And the last one we're going to touch on today, category I was interested to hear about, design and creative. What are we seeing here?
Yeah, so design and creative is incredibly important for businesses who want to have a consistent and cohesive product and connect with their customers. Businesses understand this more and more and are therefore looking for additional help and support from designers and creatives at a higher rate. These companies have found that looking to remote talent has unlocked a whole new talent pool with talented designers and creatives all over the world. And so the call out here, 3D animation saw 44% year over year growth.
Wow. That's nice. Yeah, I think last year, I think the focus was primarily on video related items, as the static marketing images were less in craze, and it was more about the video. And I guess the 3D animation is where it's at this year. Good to
Yeah,
know.
totally. Well, and as we talked about earlier, like basically anything surrounding content is continuing to accelerate. So like even though we're not necessarily if we're highlighting 3D animation versus video, like let's not think that that's slowing down either.
Yeah, definitely. Now, so what we've covered here today is the top 10 skills in various categories, and it may provide you with some inspiration on what specific areas you could focus your upskilling efforts in this year. The advice that I typically suggest to those starting out or those just looking to grow their business is to utilize your downtime. From my experience freelancing in the graphic design space, I found that there was pretty predictable busy and slow times with my clients. It sort of went in predictable waves. And I utilized the slower times where I had less projects on the go to hone my skills and expand my capabilities. And sometimes part of that was simply recharging my batteries, not just upskilling, utilizing that downtime instead of being frustrated that my clients were otherwise engaged at the time. Use this opportunity to go camping, to read a book, to learn a different skill, to practice a different technique in my Adobe suite, things of that nature. Now, if you've not already checked it out, I highly recommend you take a look at the Upwork Academy learning paths, especially for those who are just starting out. This is a fantastic on-demand content source ready for whenever you are. I'm going to drop a few links in the chat here. This one right here is for the Upwork Academy, a variety of different learning paths there, really impressive stuff. And I'm also focusing on some events, not just this quarter, but also next quarter on agencies. It's a topic that many people are interested in, including myself. I'm learning quite a lot. We're discussing how to start your own agency, how to join an existing agency, and what are some of the hurdles and challenges to expect when taking this path. There's also an Academy learning path specifically on this topic, which I highly recommend for anyone interested in the Academy sort of topic. But be sure to keep an eye out for those events. I'm going to drop this link in the chat. This link is specifically to the agency learning path. And there's a lot of questions, and I see in the Q&A there's a decent amount of questions around agencies. I'm not going to do a deep dive on it on this event, simply doing a plug. There's going to be quite a few events coming up in the coming weeks and next few months that will address a lot of these topics. What does it take? Why do I want to start an agency? Things of that nature. However, I do believe it falls in a similar category as upskilling, because for what I've heard from many successful agency owners is that there, for many, not all, is a limit on how far you can go on your own and your own skill set. At a certain point, if you want to get even bigger and better and become one of these 6 and 7 figure freelancers, sometimes starting an agency is the right call for you. So up to you, but we're gonna provide those resources in the coming days. So let me take a look at the Q&A. Give me just a minute while I get up to speed.
And while you're doing that, well, I think there was I saw a question in the general chat that folks weren't seeing the link there. I think the link was dropped in the Q&A versus the
Thank you.
general chat.
Thank you so much. Okay, here is the General Academy. Thank you very much for calling that out. I appreciate that. And then this link here is specifically to the agency version of the Academy Learning Path. This is a constantly evolving vehicle that our teams put an immense amount of effort and thought into curating for everyone. I'm also going to drop one more link here And I recommend, if you haven't got this next link already bookmarked, do it. Trust me, you'll thank yourself later. This is a community events where you registered for this event, whether you got that through email, you found it. But not only can you see what's coming up in events, but you can also see what have we done previously. We do a large amount of events around the world, talking to all sorts of different professionals and hearing all sorts of motivational stories, actionable tips, things of that nature. So that Upwork events, bookmark that page. If you ever find yourself eating lunch, maybe instead of a podcast, you throw on one of these events, something of that nature. Let me see here in the questions. Good question. Why should I worry about the in-demand skills in the market if I've already spent a lot of years to become an expert in my field? This is a great point. And what we went through today is not at all to say that stop what you're doing and quickly shift gears over to this. But it is to provide some context on what are we seeing in the market, where are people headed, or what are clients looking for. So don't think that you have to stop what you're doing if it's working. It's simply shedding some light on what you could be doing. Karen, great question here on how to find industry rates and raise rates to that area. We have quite a few events on this specific topic, not just in the events section, but also in the academy learning parts. There's a lot to do with when to raise your rates, how to raise your rates, and how do you know what you should be charging? These are all very archetypal questions that at every level of your freelancing experience, you're going to have that question, whether you've been doing it for a year, or you're doing it for 5 years or 10 years. You've got to raise your rates as you go. So there is a lot of devoted resources to that topic, Karen, if you'd like to check some of those out. And there was quite a bit of commentary on people that were having difficulty landing their first project. This is a common hurdle. And I want to first and foremost say that just because you're having a bit of difficulty getting that first few projects in the door doesn't mean you're necessarily doing it wrong. It is more difficult to get started when you don't have those reviews from clients saying, yes, I've worked with Will, he's a stand-up guy and he'll do you right. I had the same difficulties when I first started. My suggestion to you in a Cliff Notes, there's a lot of resources on this, but my suggestion to you in this space would be attend events like these, take a look at the learning resources. And the thing that helped me the most specific recommendation I could make is do A/B testing on your proposals. This took, for me, shooting in the dark, just writing proposals and seeing what worked, to a very scientific and measurable way of attaining a repeatable process. So A/B testing, you can Google it. There's a lot of, it's not a complex process, a lot of resources on it online, but essentially it's finding out which format do people like, and then use that format, modify it, modify until you get a high response rate. So hang in there. It is a common hurdle for many people first starting out. Margaret, did you have anything to add on that one? It looked like you may.
You know, I would echo some of what you said. And from the other side of it, I would say just keep at it. You got to do the work. You know, easy things don't often reward you well. And so, you know, if you keep at it and you employ strategies like perhaps A/B testing, or you know, maybe starting out with something small, so that you start to gain that trust and build up your experience on the platform, it snowballs after a certain point. And we've seen that time and time again, where people do one small project and then another project, and then they raise their rates and do a slightly bigger project, and then they gain one consistent client, and then they gain another one, and all of a sudden they're top rated plus, or they've become expert vetted talent, and they are running their entire career on Upwork. But they didn't just snap their fingers and get there overnight. And so recognizing that, you know, it is hard work to get it done, to build a career. But the payoff, once you put in that time, is there.
Definitely. Now, there's also another resource which I don't think I mentioned. I wanted to drop in the general chat here. This is also on the Upwork community side of things. Groups. We're actually going to be doing a highlight on groups next month on the 13th, just before Valentine's Day. A lovely group of people joining me for that event. But groups, succinctly put, a place where you can connect with similar types of folks in a specific area, whether that's design and creatives, whether that's single dads at freelance, whether that's people that live in Argentina. It's sliced a million different ways. My point being, this is a great place to go and talk to people about, hey, what is my experience? It's, what have you found is a good way to overcome this hurdle? Or, hey, I'm trying to do this and it's not working. How did you guys fix it? Or simply say, how's it going? I'd love to make some friends. It's a great place to network and learn. So I highly recommend you check that out. Now, there was a great question in the Q&A from Daniel. I just wanted to find that and address it. Oh, I remember. It was related to, do we find that overall, is there a general lull in jobs in January? Now, I don't have any data to speak from a logistics standpoint or from an empirical fact standpoint. I can only speak from my own personal experience as a freelancer and my general awareness of what's going on. So don't quote me on this, but this is from my experience, that I found that oftentimes in the first part of January, a lot of businesses are making their choices on, what are we going to be doing in 2023 or this upcoming year? What's my budget? What does my timeline look like? What are my resources available? So keep in mind that if some of your clients are going quiet on you in the first half or full January, it may be just because they're in a planning phase and figuring that out. So keep that in mind. But I don't have any specific figures to support anything one way or the other.
Yeah, and I also don't have specific figures on that, but if you purely look at the calendar, if you think about not just in the United States but internationally, there are a lot of holidays concentrated in the 2 week period that ends one year and begins the next. And so if you think purely about business days that give companies the opportunity to do outreach and engage in work, there are going to be fewer of those between the last week of December and the first week of January, between, like some of the religious holidays and then the New Year's Day holiday. There's also, I would think, something mildly psychological about ending one year and beginning another. And I think you well touched on that as well. There's a finish line at the end of every year, and then there's a starting line on January 1st. And so while companies may be perceived as being a little bit slower at getting out of the gates, my experience and impression is that normalizes by at least halfway through the month, if not before then. But you feel a little bit of that stretching coming out of that slowdown at the end.
Definitely. Now, there's a couple of questions here I just wanted to address quickly. What does Upwork do in regards to combating scam? We actually have an event on this, I believe, next week. So you remember that link I said bookmark? I hope you bookmarked it. Sign up for it. But we will be touching on that next week with Caitlin, I believe. There's an immense amount of infrastructure and manpower going into it behind the scenes to combat scam. It is in any online sort of situation, it is a constantly moving target, but it is something Upwork takes incredibly seriously and is super proactive about. So if you have any questions, concerns, or just want to get the lay of the land, I highly recommend you join us for that event. It's going to be a good one. And like this one, it will likely be a recurring annual one where we teach you, hey, these are the new scam techniques that people are using. Because as I said, they constantly evolve. As soon as you effectively squash one, people get real clever and they come up with another one. But it's on the radar and something we take very seriously. And then there's another one here. What does Upwork do in terms of advertising to attract more clients to the platform? That's a great question, Richard, and it's not something that I have the resources available right now to dive into, but it is something that I think I will likely make sure I collect that information for an event I'm having next month, which is how does Upwork support talent specifically on Upwork. I'll be highlighting a bunch of different programs, like the Academy program being an obvious example, but then some of the lesser known things like how do we fight scam? How do we make sure that we're getting clients on the platform to enrich the job opportunities? So I will absolutely be touching on that. And thank you so much for bringing it up. There are a variety of ones. I know there's SEO and there's all sorts of different things and teams on it, but I don't want to speak to it without any proper equipment behind me. Great question. What is the purpose of adding the boosting feature? So last year, about mid last year, I believe it was, there was the boosted proposals and the available now badge. These were both tools that were designed to specifically help those that are typically newer in the space. You know how we mentioned earlier in the presentation that when you're first starting out and you don't have those 5-star reviews yet behind you, it can be a little bit harder to grab the attention of a prospective client. These tools help you grab the attention of the prospective client. Now, you still have to write a good proposal. You still have to make sure your portfolio and your overview are dialed in nicely. But these tools are designed to help you in those efforts. Okay, and we actually have a presentation specifically on those. If you look back about July, I want to say July of last year, you can get a deep dive on what those features entail. All right. Let's see. There's a lot of great questions in here. Some of them are a little bit too niche for this presentation, so I'm not going to dive into all of those. So forgive me on that. But I'm going to try and grab a few more questions. Oh, great question here. We've shown the top 10 in-demand skills in various categories. Are we going to show the top 10 earning categories? That's a great question. I believe I did an event around that last year, but I don't yet have one set up for this year on that. But I've made a note, and I'm very curious to learn as well. If I were to take an educated guess, I would say a lot of those would fall in the tech sector, full stack development, things of that nature. I could be wrong, but I have a feeling it's definitely on that list of top 10. Margaret, do you have any pulse on that one, or is it too early to say?
I don't know that we have the data on that necessarily, and so I would be hesitant to comment on the 2022 analysis, or the analysis from 2022 on that, until we have that out in front. So I would say that's a stay tuned for a future Will Simpson production.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great question. And that actually segues well into a point I wanted to say. As we close out this event here shortly, in your email, you will have a feedback survey. I read the information there. I read your feedback, and I use that information to curate events which are of interest to you and the community as a whole. So taking a moment just to provide, what do I like? What do I not like? What would I like to hear more about? It's super helpful to me to make sure that I'm up here providing you with information that's furthering your success. So just as we like it when the clients leave us review at the end of a job, I like it when you leave me review at the end of a presentation. So keep an eye out for that. All right, folks, I think I'm going to call us here. I know we have a few more questions here, but a lot of those are going into a more niche direction. So at this time, I'm going to drop a few last links in the chat here. This is for the Upwork events, where you can find the recording of this event in a few days, as well as previous events. And then also the Academy link. Bookmark both these sites. They're fantastic resources. Margaret, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for sharing with the community here.
Yeah, so happy to be here and so happy to have the conversation. I mean, there's so much great data that we've pulled in, and there are so many different avenues that people can take in terms of leveraging this data and all of the momentum that freelancing has today. And just excited to see the community thrive and grow.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time. Again, look out for that survey in your email, probably about 10, 15 minutes here, it'll drop. And I look forward to catching you next time. Thanks so much.